Round of applause, everybody. All of you are sitting at home, round of applause. Give a round of applause to Arsenal because wow, right? So many talking points from this game. Manchester City versus Arsenal, the two best teams in the league. I said it would probably be a board draw. Well, I didn't say that, but I thought it could be that. It was nothing like that, especially in the first half. Nothing like that. But of course, before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, I told you guys I'm back. I'm back consistently. I'm back. Make sure you like, subscribe. If this is the sort of channel that you like watching, make sure you stick around, hit that post notification bell so you never ever miss out on a video. But let's get straight into it. Manchester City versus Arsenal. We all knew the narrative coming into this game. We spoke about it in the last video in which I said I have a problem with this Arsenal team. Now, Manchester City were the favorites coming into this, being the home side. Arsenal without Martin Odegaard, which is a huge miss in terms of creativity. We'll get onto that. But you look at the way this Arsenal team play, right? My biggest problem was just how defensive they are and how negative they are whenever they play against Manchester City, because I feel as though they've already lost the game mentally before they even go out on the field. They already believe they're the inferior side, which in my opinion is not the way you should play football. Whether they're a better team than you or not, go out there, play brave football, just like we saw from them a few years ago. You look at the way Manchester City actually started the game, I feel like they started so quick, so electric, so intense, just like we saw Arsenal doing a few years ago, especially in the home games. At the Emirates, Arsenal were so dynamic and so fast from the start of the game. And I think that's what Manchester City did. The Etihad was so boisterous. Erling Haaland was fired up. And you saw that lovely little jink past Calafiori from Savinho, who he had a good game. Savinho had a fantastic game in this one, and he's one of those X factor players that I'm talking about. Those players who just give you that edge in those big games where things are tight, things are edgy, things are tense. You just need somebody to just give you that respite, and Savinho did that. Played Erling Haaland through, and it was 1-0. And at that moment, in the first 10, 15 minutes, I'm watching this game, and I'm thinking, Manchester City might run away with this, because Arsenal, they looked under the cosh, completely and utterly dominated in those opening 15 minutes. But then you then see the way in which Arsenal kind of grew back into the game. They started to gain control, they started to get their foot on the ball, and you started to see the Etihad kind of tempered down a bit. Then we have the controversial topic of Kyle Walker being called over by the referee then letting him go back to his positioning before then asking for the game to be replayed or continue. And Kyle Walker then complains because he feels as though the referee called him out of his own position and he didn't give him enough time to get back into position, which ultimately led to the goal from Arsenal. Now, I would like to know what you guys think about this. In my opinion, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think Kyle Walker is just nitpicking here. I think that was one of many poor decisions that Kyle Walker made in this game, and just all-around poor performance from him. I don't really understand why Rico Lewis didn't play this game. The idea that Kyle Walker is there to stifle Martinelli. Firstly, Martinelli has not been good for about the last 12 months. Secondly, Rico Lewis has shown that he can play well against good wingers. So I don't really understand. I guess maybe from a tactical standpoint, which we'll get onto, you probably needed Kyle Walker to just be in that back three. But I think Rico Lewis would have done the job, especially in the positionings that another player was taking up on the field. I think Rico Lewis would have probably been a better bet. Obviously, I'm not giving Pep Guardiola advice. I'm not a better manager than Pep Guardiola, but just something that I noticed in the game. And of course, Arsenal go on and score that incredible goal by Ricardo Calafiori. And I feel like that goal completely turned the game on its head, because then you saw Arsenal, who were already starting to grow back into the game, take hold of the game as it was. And you started seeing them create chances, hit Manchester City on the break, actually pose a threat. And this is the problem that I had when they went to the Etihad last year. They didn't want to score a goal. They went there and they said, you know what? We'll take a 0-0. We'll take a point. Masalam. Like, bro, play football. Why are you playing as though you're a mid-table side? You are a good team. That's my problem with Arsenal. You're a good team. You have good players. You're a robust team. You're so good defensively. Use those players in the attack. Use your counter-attacking threat. Use your Bukayo Sakas. Use your Martinellis. Those outlets that you have that many teams don't have. Use them to your advantage. But instead, last year, it felt as though they were just in a shell. All right, we'll take a 0-0 and we'll go. Come on. You're better than that. And in this game, they showed that after that goal, you then see the set piece from Arsenal. Typical stuff. I mean, Arsenal are so good at set pieces, but actually, I'm looking at the goal, and one thing that I don't really understand from the goal, I kind of understand it now watching the game back. The way Manchester City defended the goal. Now, obviously, I don't expect Man City to fundamentally change their corner kick routine just because of Arsenal. But you know how good Arsenal are on set pieces. You know how they like to cross the ball over the goalkeeper's head. You know how they like to crowd that 6-yard area. They like to crowd the goalkeeper. They like to make it difficult for him to claim the ball. So why would you then still employ a zonal marking system when you know how good Arsenal are on set pieces? Get Erling Haaland on Gabriel. Get Akanji on Saliba. Get Rodri, who was unfortunately injured at this point, on people like Declan Rice. Get your big, strong men like Vardio, Akanji, Diaz, Walker, Haaland. Manchester City don't have small players. Get them man-to-man with these Arsenal players and defend. Why are you doing zonal marking? Especially when you have a goalkeeper like Ederson, who is not the most comfortable goalkeeper in the world when it comes to high claims or dominating his 6-yard box. Ederson is a midfielder playing goalkeeper. Let's be very honest with ourselves. So that was an aspect that I didn't really understand. But of course, Arsenal's set piece taking is elite. And they went into the break 2-1 up. But before they went into the break, and this was another monumental moment in the game, Leandro Trossard, what are you doing? What are you doing? Goodness me, what are you doing? When you're in that sort of position in which Arsenal were in, 2-1 up going into the halftime break, you need a level head. Calm yourself down. And I want to know what a lot of you think. Many people, I have an Arsenal friend, he believes the referee ruined the game. I don't really believe that. I don't think the referee had a huge mark on the game. I think the red card ruined the game. I don't think the referee ruined the game. But in that moment, he doesn't need to do that. And by that point, the game completely changes. But before we even start talking about what happens after halftime, I just wanted to show you guys the setup for Manchester City in those opening 15 minutes that I think really changed the game as a whole. You look at the way here, right? The way that Manchester City build up. This is very different from how they normally build up. Typically, we see them with that 3-2-5-1, or I believe 3-2-4-1, 3-2-4-1. Here, you saw them playing a 3-1-5-1. 5 players behind Erling Haaland. You had Jeremy Doku on the left side. You had Savio on the right side. But then you had 3 midfielders all in this area right here. All in this area, operating this half spaces as well as the central area, right behind Erling Haaland. And what this essentially does is you have 2 midfielders in Declan Rice and Thomas Partey who are already working very hard in covering all these spaces in between the lines. Just by having those 3 players there, you make it difficult for anybody to know who to go to. And you have an outnumbering in the midfield. Vardio in this game, incredible. And I feel like his positioning caused Arsenal so many problems, especially in those opening 15 minutes. But as we said before, once Arsenal started to gain some momentum back, he inevitably had to push farther back. But in the opening 15 minutes, when Vardy was able to venture forward like he did in this positioning here, Arsenal couldn't contend with it because they were outnumbered all over the field. You had your wide wingers holding the width. You had those players in the half spaces. Vardy, obviously, he's not a number 10, but he wasn't receiving the ball as much as he did, as you would think he would, considering the positioning he's in. And that's why I referenced it before. When you have someone like Rico Lewis, and obviously, I'm not 100% sure why he didn't play. I'm not sure if it's an injury. I'm not sure if it was suspended. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I look at someone like Rico Lewis. Why isn't he playing this game? Because if you take out somebody like Vardio from that position and you put in a Rico Lewis and you move somebody like Vardio back to defense, move Akanji to where Kyle Walker is, and then Rico Lewis kind of operates in that right-hand half space where Bernardo Silva is right here. And you can move Gundogan to the left, move Bernardo maybe to the middle. I think you add a whole new dynamic. You have Rico Lewis and Savio operating on that right-hand side, but also allowing Rico Lewis to go back as a right back. I think that completely changes the whole game because for me, Vardio's top class. He was able to operate in those positions, no problem. But I look at someone like Kyle Walker. Martinelli had him on ropes. For majority of the game, had him on ropes. Especially later on in the game, once you see the amount of chances that Manchester City players had with the ball, I think if you had someone like Rico Lewis, who's a bit more tidy with the ball, rather than someone like an Akanji or a Diaz or a Vardio, I think maybe Manchester City would have been able to get a bit more from that rather than having a player like that in that position. And then in the second half, it was a completely different game. And frankly, for me, the second half was a complete and utter snooze fest. But Arsenal, you just have to appreciate what it is that they were doing in this game. Obviously, it's not what we want to see as neutrals, but you got to do what you got to do, man. 10 men away from home at the Etihad, they're not going to come out here and still try and play their swashbuckling football. They put 10 men behind the ball, and they said, we're going to hold what we have. And I respect it. I genuinely respect it. You look at this example here. At one point in the game, they had a 6-4-0. 6-4-0. And then they saw the way in which Manchester City were operating in the half spaces, and they said, you know what? Let's just put 6 at the back. Sorry, not 6-4-0, a 5-3-0, and then a 5-4-0. And then they completely threw that, and they said, you know what? Put 6 at the back. They had Gabriel, Calafiori, Saliba, and Ben White all playing as essentially a back four. And then you had Timber on the outside on the right and Martinelli on the outside on the left. A back six. Essentially telling Manchester City, you can have the ball. You can have the ball on the outside of the box. Your Diaz's, your Akanjis, your Kovacic's, your Walkers. Y'all can have the ball. But once you get into this box, you're not getting the ball. Erling Haaland, you're not getting a sniff. Gundogan, you're not getting anything. You're not getting any change out of this team. And they did that from minute 1 of the second half to minute 90. I even want to show you guys this example here of Manchester City's averaging positions. And right here, actually, perfect example. This is Rodri. And you have his heat map here. He was unfortunately taken off in the first 20 minutes. But just look at his positioning. Look at where Rodri's positioning is. And look at where everyone else is. Now, obviously, this, you have to take into account the fact that Rodri was taken off early. So the game progressed without him. This was his average position while he was on the pitch. So now think about the fact that he's the CDM. Diaz, who's here, number 3, he would have probably been around here. Walker was probably around here. Vardio was probably in and around here. We talked about that half space he was taking up. Akanji, number 25, would have probably been around here. Look at how farther forward the entire team has gone in this, and that's probably down to the second half, which we talked about. Look at the positioning of Savio, look at the positioning of Haaland, look at the positioning of Doku. Gundogan and Bernardo in those half spaces, as we talked about. Phil Foden as well, coming on in those similar positioning. Jack Grealish came on. He was actually having a more half space positioning rather than out wide like I thought he would. For some reason, Manchester City were trying to go through the middle, which made no sense to me because you've got 6 players in that area of the field blocking the entire 18-yard box. Go down the wings and take him man for man, take him 1v1, get a ball into the box, try and create something. But for some reason, they were just forcing balls through the center of the field. They brought on Phil Foden, they brought on Jack Grealish, trying to play through the center. I don't really know why Pep Guardiola was doing that. But it seemed that I really wanted to highlight with these average positions. Just look at Arsenal here. Look at Arsenal. And this may look normal, right? A team going to the Etihad, they're always going to be under a lot of pressure. Everyone in their own half. It makes sense. Bukayo Saka being that outlet that we talked about. But also this is skewed because he was taken off at halftime. But then just look at someone like Ben White's average positioning here. Look at how deep Ben White's average positioning is. He came on in the second half. So this is only the second half where Arsenal are down to 10 men. Look at how deep he is on the field. Look at Gabriel Jesus, who came on for Martinelli. Look at how deep he is on the field. Arsenal, right? I've told you guys my opinions on them. I don't believe this team hit a high enough level based on the quality they have and based on how good their manager can be. But as I said before, maybe I need to redefine what it is that I think this Arsenal team is. Because I look at the performance today, goodness me, that takes me back to Inter Milan. That takes me back to the Jose Mourinho's Chelsea team. That takes me back to the Porto team. That takes me back to Greece. That takes me back to that Chelsea team that came to the Camp Nou and shut up shop. 10 men behind the ball. That was an incredible performance. Unfortunately for them, John Stones killed them at the end. But for me, Arsenal would have bit your hand for a draw, especially at this point in the season. They would have bit your hand for a draw. Because I think if Man City go, what would it have been? I think it would have been 5 points clear. That's a big lead to bring back, even at this point of the season. So I think for Arsenal, all things considered, man, they did their job. 3 games that I think these 3 games are going to define their season. Tottenham away, Atalanta away, Manchester City away, and they've left with, 5 points? They can be very, very happy with that. I genuinely believe they can be very, very happy with that. And maybe, hopefully, we see a bit more of this interesting side, this brave side from Arsenal, rather than playing within themselves, rather than their players just kind of hiding. There was a lot of dark arts today, a lot of, I don't even know what the word to use. Sketchy football is not the right word to use. More of dark arts is probably the best word, right? And oh my goodness, it was fun to watch. A lot of commentators say, this isn't what you like to, this is what I love to see. Players fighting, players passionate, players giving it their all, players going out there and fighting for the badge, For a long time, Arsenal have been this team that you can kind of just bully. Watford, Stoke City, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal. You always know how to beat them in the end. But this team, this is a tough team to beat. This is a tough team to beat. And the question that I want to ask you guys: do you think this Arsenal team can win the league? Right? For me, the problem has never been, can Arsenal not lose to Man City over 2 games? Because I think the game of the Emirates is there. It's on them to win that game. Always on them. Away to the Etihad is a bit more tricky, but it's the other 36 games. I look at Arsenal and I think, can you get more points than Manchester City? Can you get more points than Manchester City? I don't know. Generally, I don't know. I really don't know. I thought Inter Milan's low block was good, but goodness me, Arsenal's was good today. Of course, it's different situations. Arsenal had a red card, but man, Arsenal shut up shop, man. Again, round of applause to them. If you're at home, you're an Arsenal fan, you're a Chelsea fan, I don't care who you support, you have to respect this. You have to respect this because they dug in deep. Many teams would have crumbled. Honestly, I remember Liverpool going to the Etihad. That was I think that was 2018. They were in the game, throughout in the game. They got a red card. The game was completely gone. I think it was 1-0 when the red card happened. After that, they lost, I think 5 or 6-0. It's not easy to go to the Etihad with 10 men. It isn't. So for Arsenal, for Arteta, bravo, man. Bravo. But of course, you guys, I need to know your thoughts, your comments. What do you guys think about Arsenal? What do you guys think about Manchester City even? Do you think Mikel Arteta got his spot on? Do you think the referee was awful? I don't personally think that. What do you think about this team? Do you think Arsenal can go all the way this year? I know we've been saying this for 2 years now, but who knows, man? I still say it's hard to beat Man City. Over 38 games, it's tough. It's tough, man. But who knows? Let's see what happens. But of course, let me know all your thoughts down below. If you like the content, make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, take care of yourselves.